Hi YouTube, welcome back to another video from WTFRC Cars. So if you've got either of the new FlySky transmitters and you're just getting a bit overwhelmed with the option of receivers and stuff, I'm basically going to take you through a few of the options and explain the differences between these so you know what the receivers are, what the sensors are and what the settings do and what your choices are. So you can choose the best setup for what you want to achieve. Now most of this, in fact nearly all of it, will apply to the regular MB4 or the MB4 Pro. But today I'm going to concentrate on the Plus variants because they're the only ones you can actually buy new now. So let's bring you in for a close-up look, see how we get on with this one. So you've got your new transmitter and you want to connect it to a bunch of RCs and you're wondering what the difference is between all these different receivers. So you can pretty much narrow it down to, if it's a black and red receiver, it's going to be one of the classic receivers. So when you're going into your bind menu, you're going to bind these as classic. Now the limitations with these, you can change your servo frequency, and I'll cover that a bit later. But basically these are fixed ports, so you've got a port that says servo, that can be set to iBus, S-Bus, then you've got a separate port for your sensors. If you're using the flight receivers like the FTR10, same again, you've got a servo port, you've got a sense port, and the rest of the ports are fixed to be PPM or PWM. And you've not got a lot of options with them. Now for these type of receivers, so it'll cover the FGR4S, the FGR4P, basically all the ones with the black and red sort of labelling. So these will run with these standard type sensors, so the voltage, temp sensors, and all you do is plug them into the sense port on the FTR10 or the FGR4. If you're using the FGR4S, the smaller one, or the 4P, you've got one port that you can select to be either iBus or your sensor port. And these are daisy chainable, so you can just plug them into each other, which is why we've only got one selectable port. So you just plug them all in and you plug the last one into sort of the sense port, and all your little sensors will show up. Now moving on from this, we then have the enhanced receivers, and as a rule these are all the coloured ones. So if it's purple, orange, blue or yellow, the purple one is aimed at racing or electric racing, and on this one you've got all the ports, say NP, A, B, C and D. You've got 4 channels. You also get the battery voltage detection cable. So this will plug into the BVD port, and this will read you your LiPo voltage. That comes with all the enhanced receivers. Furthermore, on these you can get up to 12 channel, so we've got a lot of choice. And the 12 channel ones also usable on an 8 channel radio, because the extra channels are all the new ports, and each one of these can be set to iBus 2. Now the iBus 2 sensors are the breakout box, which will add you another bunch of iBus 2 ports. This can be set to iBus 2 or PWM, so you can either have it as an extension to give you 7 more iBus 2 ports or 7 more channels, and it can also be supplied with external power, so if you're not pulling too much power through your receiver. Then you've got the more advanced sensors like the GPS sensors and everything. They'll all work with the enhanced receivers. The big advantage with these is you can set each port to a different servo frequency. And then you've got the waterproof ones. We've also got likes of the FTR12B. This is an enhanced one. This is aimed at flight, but you can also use it to get extra range, especially with the range extenders that work on these things. But as a rule, almost all other than the waterproof ones, the enhanced ones don't need a bind plug. They've just got a bind button that you can press and hold for update or press quickly to put them into bind mode as you power them up. Now, your big advantage with the enhanced ones are iBus 2 compatibility for all the more advanced sensors. You've got 4 ports that can be changed to whatever you want. So iBus, SBus, you can configure them. If you're using a more restricted standard like standard iBus or SBus, you can only change 1 port to be the input for that. If you're using iBus 2, you can set multiple. You can also, with these, because they can do iBus 2, you can use the iBus 2 servos. And you've got a far higher servo frequency that these can cope with. So I think on the classic ones you're restricted to the highest is about 400 Hz that they'd go to. If you get some of the more advanced programmable servos, these can be set to 833 or 1000 Hz, and the enhanced receivers can cope with that. A dead giveaway if you've got your servo frequency too high, so if you're using like a cheaper standard servo, if you go much above 333 Hz, this will start twitching like mad. So if, for example, you've got an RC where you say have a really high frequency servo, but you've also got other servos in there, if you're using the classic receiver, you've got a 400 Hz max, not really going to get the best out of this type of servo, but also all the ports change at the same time. If you use an enhanced one, you can have your steering set to 1000. Then if you've got an auxiliary servo, so say on one of speedrun cars moving the rear wing and it's just a cheap servo, you put 1000 Hz into this, it'll either not do anything or it'll just twitch like mad. So the port that this gets connected to, you can set this down to 333 or lower and make sure that this servo is perfectly happy. Can also, with some of the cheaper ESCs, they can't cope with SSR or SFR mode, so 800 odd or 1000 Hz, so you'd get weird behavior on your ESC. So you can set channel 2 to be 333 Hz, keep your ESC happy, and this is the same on all the enhanced receivers and all the radios. So it does give you a lot of options. Generally speaking, I would go for an enhanced receiver. I mean, if you look at them, they're tiny. So even the one with the big dual antennas, it's quite a small footprint. They're not going to take a lot of room up. You can get really tiny micro ones. So FlySky do the GMR, and I think Das Micro do a whole bunch of ones with built-in ESCs and that if you want really, really small. And most of them bind as a classic one. They're basically clones of the original FGR4S V1, and they can be a bit of a pain to update as well. I've got a few videos on the Das Micro ones. But yeah, that's just to give you an idea of how or why you might choose a different receiver. As a rule, you won't really see so many of the classic ones now. They don't tend to come with any of these radios unless the reseller has specifically asked for them. As a rule from racing, I would tend to go with the FGR4B for nitro, just because you've got the antenna, and it's a bit more suited to nitro. You get a bit more interference, so having the antenna kind of alleviates that. For any electric RC or indoor, I'd go with the FGR4D. But if you are racing outdoors in extremely wet conditions, then there's also the option of going with the FBR8, if I can get this out box. Mainly on this one, they do 2 different versions, really long antenna and really like normal length antenna, but they are completely waterproof. So if racing outdoors in winter seasons is something that you're interested in, you got gold-plated connectors and it's 100% waterproof. You can literally dunk this entire thing in a tub of water and it'll still function perfectly. So definitely for wet weather racing guys, this is a good option. Also the long antenna version, fantastic option for RC boats, or can even come in really handy for crawlers if you like driving them underwater. Never got the fascination with that, but I know a lot of guys out there do it. But yeah, because the antenna will get the antenna above the waterline, you'll not get reduced range when you're driving underwater with them. And as I said, they can get completely soaked wet through. The rest of the enhanced receivers are sort of splash proof, so little bit of water on them, bit of driving it rain won't really bother them, but if you're dunking them underwater, probably not the best option. But yeah, at least that gives you some idea of the different receivers out there and the choice and why you would go for them, especially if you're wanting to use the more complex GPS or iBus 2 breakouts. You really need to be going with the enhanced receivers. The FGR4 original one nice touch with this is it can handle 12 volts, so I tend to use this in my petrol engine 5th scale, just because you can put really high power to the servos. You've got huge servos in a true 5th scale, and if your receiver can handle 12 volt and you get some big high powered 12 volt servos, you don't have to mess around sort of bypassing the receiver, although just bear in mind you've only got little pins and a little circuit board, so if you know you're powering multiple really high amp servos, probably still better off direct power to the servo, but you've got a receiver that can handle up to 12 volts, so you can get away with running 3S and it doesn't care, basically. So you don't have to have a separate battery or a little UBC to drop the voltage down for your receiver. So certainly in the 5th scales, this one still comes in handy, and the FTR10's the same. This can run 12 volts straight through it. Your enhanced receivers, I think mainly they're all the same voltage, 3.5 to 9 volt, so 2S wouldn't really bother them at all. If you got a full 8.4 volt pack, these really won't care. They're all the same voltage to what I can remember. Yeah, every one of these here is up to 9 volt, and because these can run 9 volt, I just take it for granted that all the iBus 2 stuff can run 9 volt. Yeah, it does say on the iBus 2 breakout box that can handle 9 volt as well. So if you're running like a big 5th scale RC and you're going to be running your servos at 12 volt, FGR4 V2 or FTR10, they're a good option for you. Other than that, any of these will be able to run with your standard high voltage servos, even up to 8.4 volt, won't bother the receiver one bit. But hopefully that clears up some of the differences and some of the reasons why you'd want to do this. The consideration of servo frequency, you don't tend to get really high frequency ones on the big 5th scale servos, so again, the classic receivers fit perfect for that. If you are going to run some more sort of high-end servos like the AGFRC programmable Yantris, FlySky, I think MKS, if I remember rightly, their servos can handle 1000 hertz. So basically anything where you see this sort of thing, where it's like SR, SSR, SUR, SFR, or you'll see it say 1000 hertz servo or iBus 2 servo. So any of them, I think Power HD also does some iBus 2 servos now, and I might have to grab some of them. But yeah, enhanced receivers are always going to be a better option for these, because these can go above the 400 hertz ceiling that your classic receivers have got. And you can also set per port. So if you know that you've got 1000 hertz servo on your steering, you can set it to that. If you've got 1000 hertz iBus 2, you can set a port to that. I have got all videos showing how to set these up individually, and basically the playlist that I've already got for the MB4 Pro and the MB4, you can see all these settings in those videos. If I get time, I will work through and doing quick little videos on how to set these up on these two transmitters, but functionally they're pretty much the same. Certainly how you set up the servo frequency and everything remains the same for MB4, MB4 Plus, MB4 Pro and MB4 Pro Plus. A little bit confusing with all these names and numbers, but I'm trying to get there. So yeah, this video I just wanted to clear up the differences. One thing that you can say is if it says AFHDS3, it will work with any of these transmitters, including the original versions. So if you notice on all these, they're all AFHDS3. So if it doesn't say AFHDS3, it will not work with the MB4 or MB4 Plus, Pro or Pro Plus. So any of these, what say ANT, they're for the ST8 and G7P. Any that say AFHDS2 or 2A, they're again for the older style transmitters. I think the GT5 off the top of my head is one of them that they work with. But basically any of these servos will work happily with any of the MB4 radios, also the PL18 and the PL18EV and the EL18 and NV14. They all use these enhanced receivers. I'm sure the NV14 was AFHDS3. But yeah, this is not all the receivers they do. It's all the ones I've got kicking about at the minute. They do a whole bunch of them. There's 2 different waterproof. I think kicking around somewhere here. Yeah, I've got the 8-channel flight version of this. So we've also got that. Classic receivers, there's the FGR4S with the tiny little antenna like this. There's the FGR4P that is more like this sort of style with a little antenna. That was aimed at the Nitros. There's a bunch of DAS Micro receivers that I've used with varying degrees of success. Some of them work really well. Some of them are a pain to update, whereas these, if it's any of the enhanced ones, you just press and hold the button till the light flashing pattern changes. Any like the FTR10, you just put the bind key in across to the next channel. FGR4, again, bind key in between bind and the sense pin on channel 3 to update them. But the DAS Micro ones, you end up taking them apart and shorting out channel 4 to the bind button on one. There's one where you have to short something else out in it to get it to update. Can be a bit of a pain. The other thing, all these receivers will bind to the actual transmitter but also the model memory. So if you accidentally turn it on the wrong model memory, these won't work. It's by design, just so you don't end up with your throttle being set completely wrong center point and offshoots your RC. The DAS Micro ones, what I've found, only bind to the transmitter. So no matter what model memory you're on, they will engage as soon as you turn the transmitter on. Definitely something to look out for. I have tried a bunch of the DAS Micro. The only one that I came across that I really liked, I used a micro one in my SCX24, and that's a DAS Micro one with a built-in ESC. So if I quickly just grab that. So this tiny little thing, this is a DAS Micro receiver. So we've got the input for the battery, the output for the motor, and it's got a little bind button. But I've left this little cable in because to put it into update mode, I have to short channel 4 to the bind button to get it in update mode. Other than that, it does work well. We've got the output to the lights, so it still powers lights. And this one's just for a brushed motor. But yeah, very, very small. And it does work well. I think I changed the battery plug on it. So it's kind of soldered in at a weird angle, but yeah, it works. It does what it's meant to. But again, that is a clone of the V1FGR4S, I believe. So not entirely sure how it would react if you just turn a transmitter on that it's bound to and it's on wrong channel. It'll probably just shoot off somewhere. But with it being a tiny little crawler, it's not that important. And it would just quite nice to get such a tiny little footprint. But hopefully that answers pretty much most of the questions that I've been sort of faced with on how do I know which receiver works with these transmitters, what sensors work with what transmitters, and sort of what the difference is between these receivers and how to get the best out of them. But if you've got any questions at all, pop them down below and I'll try and run through and do a video and give you some answers. But for now, let's wrap this one up. So there you have it. I've done my best to demystify the difference between classic and enhanced receivers, what to look out for on a receiver, and what would sort of guide your decision depending on what sensors you want to use, what servos you want to use, and how to get the best out of them. So quite a lot to take in on that video, and I've probably given people information to give me more questions, but end of the day, that's what I do this channel for, to demystify all these weird names and weird settings for you guys. If you see something or you've heard something on that you're interested in and you want me to do a video on either of these transmitters or both, then just pop a comment down below and I will try my best to get a video done for you. So thanks again for watching WTF RC Cars. Hopefully there's some information in there that's useful for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to friends and family, and catch you guys again in the next one.